Now that some of the dust is beginning to settle around what happened at Charlie Kirk's political assassination, we need to start asking some very tough questions. We know who the shooter was. We know he was a far left-wing radical, that he lived with his transgender boyfriend, and that he was a Redditor. He was steeped in far left-wing ideology and had some very mysterious online connections, many of those group chats publishing showing that there was foreknowledge about this assassination, that the shooter admitted it on Discord, and that there may well be some connections to some dark left-wing groups that perhaps had assisted the shooter. The investigation is ongoing. There was an enormous amount of strange things that happened that day that defy explanation, and we merely ask the question here, what the hell is going on? In order to get to the answer about what truly happened that day and how deep does this go? This is something that popped up on social media almost instantly. A man who seemingly was celebrating this result in the aftermath, the mere seconds after the shots rang out in Utah. Everybody wondered what was going on here and if this was an indication of a larger plot within the audience in order to attack Charlie. What we've seen, of course, from footage of the rally before the shooting was there was a large contingency from a high vantage point of transgender activists and left-wing mutants who were jeering and screaming and shrieking at Charlie. Now keep that in mind because we're going to return to it in a moment. Something very, very dark and mysterious happened there. I want to clear the record here because this mystery bearded man who appeared to cheer for Charlie Kirk claims that what he was doing was chanting USA, USA to try and potentially create a distraction for someone who may be wishing to harm Charlie. This is what he says in his words. He goes by David. On his X account, he posted a video where he says he was trying to create a distraction to save lives. Now, let me, again, when I heard a sharp crack, I thought perhaps it was a firework or a disruptive prank, he says, wearing the same hat and the same outfit. And he said he looked up the horizon for smoke. When none appeared, I realized that it must have been a firearm. And he was simply trying to assist. By the way, this does happen. He says he stood and shouted USA, not as a provocation, but a projection of strength. When President Trump, for instance, has a protester that sneaks into the crowd and tries to agitate, the crowd often breaks into a USA, USA chant. It happens at almost every single Trump rally. So there's some foundational evidence to that claim. There's no foundational evidence to what happened here. I want to talk about this. In the aftermath of Charlie's shooting, when nobody knew what had happened, an elderly man in his 70s, a bald dude, was taken away by police. Everybody filmed it, and people shouted at him because he had identified himself as the shooter. There are, of course, thousands of social media posts saying this is the man who allegedly shot Charlie Kirk. He's being taken away. The officers are questioning him, the man who shot Charlie Kirk. Videos of this individual. Why was this individual taken into custody? This individual's name is George Zinn. Some of the footage from that day.
Was that you? We don't know if it's him or not.
George Zinn is saying, "Shoot me," to the crowd. He's demanding that somebody commit violence against him.
How dare you! 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 He's such a monster! Back up!
You can see, obviously, a very heated crowd around George Zinn. The reason why this is happening is not because of some type of irrational mob justice. It's because George Zinn shouted, "I am the shooter," raised his hands, and directed everyone to him, including law enforcement, as you can see here. At least a half dozen officers arresting George Zinn. George Zinn, however, was released when it became clear that, in fact, he was not the shooter. At least he didn't fire. He did not have a firearm with him, and he did not fire any weapon that day. So what happened? What the hell is going on with this guy? First man arrested in Charlie Kirk shooting wanted to help the shooter escape, according to documents. Let's read. The man arrested in connection with the deadly shooting of Charlie Kirk yelled, "I shot him, now shoot me," immediately after the shooting in an attempt to help the shooter, the real shooter, escape, according to new documents filed. George Zinn, 71, was taken into custody following the shooting, but was later cleared of having any direct involvement with the shooting. He was arrested on the suspicion of obstruction of justice. Currently, investigators have a suspect in custody, Tyler Robinson, 22 years old, after he told family members that he was the one who shot Charlie Kirk, and according to the New York Times and Washington Post, admitted it in group chats. All right. According to the FBI, also, they have DNA evidence that points to this, video evidence, and so on. According to the affidavit of probable cause filed today, immediately after the shooting, George Zinn walked up to a police officer and started yelling, "I shot him, now shoot me." The officer could not see a weapon in his hand and placed him in handcuffs and under arrest. The officer asked him where the gun was, and he said, "I'm not going to tell you." What? As he was transported to the police department, he allegedly continued to say that he shot Charlie Kirk and that he wanted to die. He wanted the police to shoot him. At the department, Zinn was advised of his rights. Asked for a lawyer. According to the affidavit, he asked for a lawyer without being asked any questions by investigators. He stated that he did not shoot Kirk and that he did it to draw attention away from the real shooter. Zinn was later taken to the hospital because of a medical condition, and he reportedly told an officer he was glad that he said he shot the individual so that the suspect could get away. He said he wanted to be a martyr for the person who was shot, according to the probable cause statement. He was admitted to the hospital and released on September 15th, and he was booked into the Utah County Jail on suspicion of obstruction of justice in a capital first-degree felony case. Okay. What? This makes no sense. Why was he at the event at all? I mean, did he know that the shooting was going to happen? He was just there. He was just ready to say, "I'm the shooter," like in that very instance. You know, this happens almost instantaneously. Man 71 told cops that that he shot Charlie Kirk in order to give the real shooter time to escape. So I guess he's accessory to murder. Man claimed to have shot Charlie Kirk. Allows gunman to escape. Well, this did, of course, immediately draw a significant amount of law enforcement resources to the man who's there claiming to be the shooter. I mean, of course. So there's great questions about Tyler Robinson. How did he escape? How did he get on the roof? Where's the footage of him on the roof? How did he assemble a rifle? How did he get a rifle in? Why was no one on the roof? And so on. The questions need to be asked about this individual. Would Tyler Robinson have been caught on the premises if all of the officers who were arresting George Zinn had been spread out in order to try and quarantine the area and get the real shooter? Tyler Robinson, of course, was able to escape and was able to escape hundreds of miles back to his hometown. He could have gone to Mexico. He could have fled forever. He turned himself in. Family turned him in. Old man who falsely claimed he shot Charlie Kirk. Known gadfly who told cops he did it to draw attention to the shooter. A known gadfly. The faux shooter made similarly strange and opaque comments after being transported to the hospital. Here's his mugshot. Zinn is locally and political gadfly who frequently pops up at events and is nearly always tossed out with numerous trespassing arrests at events like this, festivals, protests, and political rallies. At almost every political event you can think of, there's always George somewhere in the background listening, says the Salt Lake District Attorney. He's a person who can be odd, and those kinds sometimes have odd behavioral changes. In 2013, Zinn threatened to bomb the Salt Lake City Marathon and spent a year in jail for the incident. So he threatens to bomb the marathon? So he's already a terrorist? There's no indication that he knows the apprehended suspect, Tyler Robinson. Just a dark coincidence? Investigators are looking into possible extended network that aided and abetted the college dropout living with his male-to-female transgender partner. So he already made terroristic threats? Why? An improvised, on-the-fly, pro-murder accomplice. That's exactly right. It's extremely strange. That's all I'm saying. It's just extremely strange. I want to dismantle the entirety of the left-wing terrorist network that assisted in the murder of my friend. This individual, whether he knows Tyler Robinson or not, assisted in the murder, in the lack of an apprehension, immediate apprehension, that I think would have answered a lot of questions. Imagine if Tyler Robinson had been stopped that day with the firearm on site. The initial reactions, the videotape of him, people filming with their cameras, we would know so much more. But now we know nothing. George Zinn asked if he could help plant bombs after the Boston Marathon bombing. It's very weird. Maybe it is just dark coincidence. Maybe there's something more. I don't know. Well-known political gadfly. We have a full-blown criminal conspiracy on our hands, and we need competent law enforcement tracking down this terrorist network, not idiots talking about hate speech and forcing shop owners to bake the cake. That's right. This is the clip that I wanted to show you. This is a clip from Steve Bannon's War Room. This is Phil Lyman. While everyone was hiding, there was a group of kids that were not hiding. They were not afraid. They knew something the rest of us didn't. I want to just play you this clip. This is how we'll end. I'll let the man speak for himself, just like this individual. The group he's talking about is right here. He's going to talk about how when everyone else was cowering and hiding, when they heard the shots ring out, which is, of course, your natural instinct when you hear shots ring out, this particular group of activists, LGBT activists, seemingly were just standing still and did not duck and cover in a near celebratory mood. So, what you've seen reflected online, attitudes that you've seen obviously reflected online throughout the internet. Is there something more there? I don't know. But we're going to talk about this in order for everyone in the public to see it and understand what we're dealing with. Here's Phil Lyman.
Yeah, Steve, I think you said this morning that they're part of the dying Republican Party. That's the side of the Republican Party that needs to go away because they're not Republicans and they don't have our values. And I'll tell you one thing that, I was there on Wednesday. I spoke to Charlie in advance of that, and he brings the party with him. And it was a party. I mean, he's throwing hats, and these kids, they look to Charlie so much. Turns out they don't like being lied to any more than the rest of us do. And when they see things that happen that don't add up, it's hard to fool these kids. They've got their cameras. They're watching these things happen. So I went up top, the back of the venue, right when the gunshot happened. Now, I don't know if it was a gunshot. I don't even know what all of that was at this point. But the thing I noticed is that there were some people, while everyone was hiding behind the retaining walls and ducking down and, wondering what's going to come next, there were a group of kids who were not hiding. And it was kind of the LGBTQ. I walked right over and I said, and I heard one of them, utter a real nasty epithet, not to Charlie Kirk, or not to Charlie Kirk, but to the crowd that's running away, go F yourselves type of thing. And I said, was that gunshot not right here? And they said, yeah, it was right over there. The point being, they weren't afraid. They knew something. They knew something that the rest of the people in that crowd didn't know. They were not afraid. If the gunshot was right over there, if the gunshot was right behind them, why are they not hitting the ground? Why are they not running? Why are they not concerned for their lives?
Hold it.
I was afraid it was going to turn into a mass shooting. So I'm out there looking, where is this coming from?
Hang on. Slow down. I want to hit rewind. And we're going to keep here for a few minutes. We've got Alex DeGrasse coming up the next hour. No. So you went, because you're a big supporter of Charlie, you know him. You went actually to Utah Valley University that day to either see Charlie and to kind of see, and look, it was 3,000, 4,000 folks. It's a big crowd. You went down there.
Right.
So talk to me about beforehand as you get there. Take your time. Before the shooting, before anything like that, was it the typical kind of Charlie at the university? Because I think it started noon. He was shot at 12:23. I think it started a few minutes late, but the first part was just Charlie being Charlie, throwing the hats out in the thing and getting the kids all jacked up to ask some questions.
Yeah. So I went back, was invited again. These turning point chapters are amazing, and I happen to have a really good rapport with a lot of those students. And they said, "Hey, come down. We want you to be here. We want you to meet Charlie." So I went back with them, and that was till about 12. About 5 minutes after 12. I was talking to him right up until then. Said, "Thanks for coming to Utah." So I walked up there with him, and all these kids, and his security detail. And he's throwing out hats, and I'm just watching and thinking, this is a magical time and a happy time. These kids are excited. He's blowing kisses to the protesters because there were some of them that were yelling epithets at him, and I thought this is a really important individual in the lives of these kids, and he's changing lives, and this is an exciting time. We're witnessing these changes, and so I stayed right there until the questions started coming, and then I thought, well, I want to get some of my friends who are still en route. Meet them, get them down here, so maybe they can shake Charlie's hand, say hello to him after he's done. So I went back to the far end of the eastern end of the amphitheater there, which is layered up. So I was up at the top, so that's kind of what happened up until that point. It's funny because I was standing there next to a young man. He was a handicapped individual, and he said, "Hey, do you know Charlie Kirk?" And I said, "I do." He said, "Can you get me a hat?" And I said, "I can." And right about that time, Charlie was coming, and he was chucking hats, and thousands of people screaming, and I just raised my hand and said, "Hey, Charlie, over here." And he looked over, and I think he looked at me like, "What? You want me to throw you a hat?" And I pointed, and when he saw the individual, he was almost to throw the hat, and when he saw the individual, he stopped, and he came over and he handed it to him with the biggest smile on his face, and I just thought, That's a class act. That's a good person. And anyone that is around Charlie Kirk, you feel it. You feel like that's a good person.